The morning mist hung low over Lake Superior's pristine waters as 8-year-old Tommy Richardson skipped stones along the rocky shoreline. It was July 15th, 2001, and the Richardson family had driven up from Minneapolis for their annual summer vacation at their rustic cabin near Grand Portage, Minnesota. Tommy, with his freckled face and gap-toothed smile, was the kind of boy who collected interesting rocks, built elaborate sandcastles, and could spend hours watching the lake's ever-changing moods. His parents, Mark and Sarah Richardson, had purchased the small lakefront property 3 years earlier, fulfilling a dream of having a peaceful retreat where their children could experience the natural beauty of Minnesota's North Shore. Mark worked as an insurance adjuster, while Sarah taught 3rd grade at Roosevelt Elementary in Minneapolis. They were a close-knit family who valued simple pleasures and quality time together. Tommy's older sister, 12-year-old Emma, preferred reading mystery novels on the cabin's screened porch to outdoor adventures, but she always kept a protective eye on her younger brother. The siblings had that special bond that comes from being each other's constant companions during long car rides and family vacations. If you enjoy real mysteries like this one, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any cases. On that particular Sunday morning, the Richardson family had planned a hiking excursion along the Superior Hiking Trail, a 210-mile footpath that winds through the rugged terrain of Minnesota's North Shore. The trail offered breathtaking views of Lake Superior and passed through dense forests of birch, aspen, and pine trees. Tommy had been excited about the hike for days, packing his small backpack with his favorite snacks, his Junior Ranger notebook, and a disposable camera his grandmother had given him for his birthday. The family set out around 9 in the morning from the Cascade River State Park trailhead, about 20 minutes from their cabin. The weather was perfect for hiking. Clear skies, comfortable temperature in the mid-70s, with a gentle breeze coming off the lake. Mark carried the family's day pack with water bottles, sandwiches, and first aid supplies, while Sarah brought her camera to capture the scenic vistas they would encounter along the way. Tommy bounded ahead on the trail, his energy seemingly endless as he pointed out interesting rock formations and collected small stones that caught his eye. Emma walked between her parents, occasionally calling out warnings to Tommy not to stray too far ahead. The family dynamic was typical of countless others enjoying Minnesota's natural beauty that summer day. Parents savoring the peaceful moments while keeping watchful eyes on their children. The trail they chose was a moderate 3-mile loop that would take them through varying terrain, including dense forest sections, rocky outcroppings with panoramic lake views, and small creek crossings. Local park rangers described it as an ideal family hike, suitable for children with adequate supervision. The Richardson family had hiked portions of this same trail during previous visits and felt comfortable with the terrain and their children's hiking abilities. Around 10:30 in the morning, the family stopped at a scenic overlook called Eagle's Perch, which offered spectacular views of Lake Superior stretching endlessly toward the horizon. Tommy was fascinated by the massive cargo ships visible in the distance, and Mark explained how these vessels carried iron ore and grain across the Great Lakes. Sarah took several photographs of the children posing against the dramatic backdrop of lake and sky. After spending about 15 minutes at the overlook, the Richardson family continued along the trail, which led them into a denser section of forest where towering pines created a natural canopy overhead. The path here was well marked with blue blazes painted on trees every 20 to 30 feet, but the thick vegetation meant that visibility was limited to just a few yards in any direction. It was in this section of trail, approximately 2 miles from their starting point, that the ordinary family hike transformed into every parent's worst nightmare. Mark and Sarah were walking together, discussing their plans for the following day, when they realized they could no longer hear Tommy's voice or see his bright red t-shirt through the trees ahead. Emma was the first to notice her brother's absence. "Where's Tommy?" she asked, her voice carrying a note of concern that immediately caught her parents' attention. Mark called out Tommy's name, expecting to hear his son's cheerful response from just around the next bend in the trail. When no answer came, a chill ran down Mark's spine despite the warm summer air. The family quickened their pace, calling Tommy's name more urgently as they advanced along the trail. Sarah's maternal instincts kicked into high gear as she scanned the forest on both sides of the path, looking for any sign of her youngest child. The minutes stretched endlessly as they searched, their voices echoing through the quiet woods. After 10 minutes of increasingly frantic calling and searching, Mark made the decision to split up. He sent Sarah and Emma back toward the Eagle's Perch overlook in case Tommy had somehow turned around and was retracing his steps, while he continued forward on the trail. They agreed to meet back at their current location in 20 minutes if neither group found Tommy. Mark pressed on alone, his heart pounding as he called his son's name and checked every possible place an 8-year-old might have wandered off the trail. He looked behind large boulders, near fallen logs, and in small clearings where Tommy might have been distracted by something interesting. The forest that had seemed so peaceful and welcoming just minutes earlier now felt ominous and full of hidden dangers. When the 20-minute deadline arrived and neither search effort had produced any sign of Tommy, Mark knew they needed professional help. Using his cell phone, which fortunately had adequate signal in this area, he called 911 at exactly 11:15 in the morning. The call would mark the beginning of one of the most extensive missing person searches in Minnesota's North Shore history. Cook County Sheriff's Deputy Lisa Martinez was the first responder to arrive at the scene, reaching the family's location on the trail within 30 minutes of Mark's emergency call. Deputy Martinez had 15 years of experience in search and rescue operations in the challenging terrain of northeastern Minnesota, and she immediately began coordinating a systematic search effort. The initial response followed established protocols for missing child cases in wilderness areas. Deputy Martinez called for additional units, including the Cook County Search and Rescue Team, K-9 units from the Minnesota State Patrol, and volunteer searchers from the North Shore Search and Rescue Organization. Within 2 hours, over 40 trained searchers were combing the forest around the area where Tommy was last seen. The search teams used a grid pattern to systematically cover every square foot of terrain within a 2-mile radius of Tommy's last known location. Searchers called out his name constantly, hoping to hear a response that would guide them to his location. The dense forest canopy made visual searching extremely challenging, requiring teams to move slowly and carefully examine every possible hiding spot or area where a small child might have become trapped or injured. As evening approached on that first day, the search expanded to include helicopters from the Minnesota State Patrol and the U.S. Coast Guard. The aircraft used thermal imaging equipment to scan the forest from above, looking for any heat signature that might indicate Tommy's presence. Lake Superior's shoreline was also searched by boat, though the rocky coastline and cold water temperatures made survival unlikely if Tommy had somehow reached the lake. The Richardson family spent that first terrible night at a local motel, unable to return to their cabin while their son remained missing. Mark and Sarah took turns staying awake, hoping for a phone call with good news that never came. Emma, trying to be strong for her parents, made lists of Tommy's favorite hiding spots and games, thinking they might provide clues to where he had gone. By the second day, the search had grown to include over 100 volunteers from across the region. Local community members, experienced hikers, and concerned parents joined the professional search teams in what became one of the largest coordinated search efforts in the area's history. The media began covering the story, and Tommy's photograph appeared on local television news broadcasts and in newspapers throughout Minnesota and Wisconsin. Search dogs followed Tommy's scent trail from the point where he was last seen, but the trail ended abruptly at a rocky outcropping about 300 yards off the main hiking trail. The handlers found this puzzling, as scent trails typically fade gradually rather than stopping suddenly. Various theories were proposed to explain this phenomenon, including the possibility that Tommy had been picked up by someone or had fallen into water that washed away his scent. The Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension joined the investigation on day 3, bringing additional resources and expertise in missing person cases. Agents interviewed the Richardson family extensively, retracing every detail of their hike and Tommy's behavior that morning. They also began investigating the possibility that Tommy's disappearance might not have been accidental. Investigators learned that Tommy was an obedient child who rarely disobeyed direct instructions from his parents. He had been taught about trail safety and had never before wandered off during family hikes. This behavioral pattern made his sudden disappearance even more mysterious and concerning to the investigating officers. The search area was expanded to cover nearly 20 square miles of wilderness, including rugged terrain that would be nearly impossible for an 8-year-old to navigate alone. Specialized cave rescue teams explored the numerous natural caves and rock formations in the area, while marine units searched Lake Superior's shoreline and underwater areas near the coast. After 7 days of intensive searching involving hundreds of volunteers and professional rescuers, the active search was scaled back to periodic sweeps by smaller teams. The Cook County Sheriff's Department maintained Tommy's case as an active missing person investigation, but the immediate hope of finding him alive had faded as each day passed without any trace of the boy. Mark and Sarah Richardson refused to give up hope, even as the official search efforts diminished. They remained in the Grand Portage area for several more weeks, conducting their own searches and distributing flyers with Tommy's photograph throughout the region. The local community rallied around the family, providing meals, lodging, and emotional support during their darkest hours. As autumn arrived and the tourist season ended, the Richardson family faced the agonizing decision of whether to return to their normal lives in Minneapolis while Tommy remained missing. The parents took turns staying in the area to continue searching, while Emma returned to school and tried to resume some semblance of normal life. The case generated significant media attention throughout Minnesota and the surrounding region, with age-progressed photographs of Tommy being distributed annually on the anniversary of his disappearance. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children added Tommy's case to their database, and his information was entered into national missing person databases maintained by law enforcement agencies. Over the years that followed, the investigation took numerous turns as new tips and potential leads emerged. Several reported sightings of Tommy in various locations throughout the Midwest were investigated, but none proved to be credible. The case file grew thick with witness statements, search reports, and follow-up investigations, but the central mystery remained unsolved. In 2003, new search technology allowed investigators to conduct more sophisticated examinations of the area where Tommy disappeared. Ground-penetrating radar was used to search for any subsurface anomalies that might indicate buried remains, while improved GPS mapping systems allowed for more precise documentation of all previously searched areas. A significant development occurred in 2005 when a family camping in the area reported finding a child's sneaker that appeared to match the description of the shoes Tommy had been wearing. The shoe was located approximately 5 miles from where Tommy was last seen, in an area that had been searched multiple times. However, forensic examination could not definitively link the shoe to Tommy, and the discovery raised more questions than it answered. The Richardson family struggled to cope with the ongoing uncertainty surrounding Tommy's fate. Mark and Sarah divorced in 2007, both citing the overwhelming stress of their son's disappearance as a contributing factor to their marital breakdown. Emma, now in her late teens, became an advocate for missing children and volunteered with search and rescue organizations during her summer breaks from college. Cold case investigators periodically reviewed Tommy's file, applying new analytical techniques and technologies as they became available. DNA analysis was conducted on various pieces of evidence collected during the initial search, but none yielded useful results. Digital enhancement of photographs from the area was performed to identify any previously unnoticed details that might provide clues. In 2012, the case received renewed attention when a documentary filmmaker created a short film about Tommy's disappearance. The documentary included interviews with the original search team members, family friends, and law enforcement officers who had worked on the case. While the film didn't uncover any new evidence, it helped keep Tommy's story in the public consciousness. The investigation took an unexpected turn in 2014 when a hiker discovered what appeared to be remnants of a child's backpack in a remote area about 8 miles from the original search zone. The fabric was heavily weathered and partially buried under years of fallen leaves and debris. Although the backpack could not be definitively linked to Tommy, its discovery prompted a new search of the surrounding area using more advanced metal detection equipment. Local law enforcement agencies periodically conducted training exercises in the area where Tommy disappeared, using his case as a realistic scenario for new search and rescue personnel. These training sessions served the dual purpose of maintaining readiness for future emergencies, while potentially uncovering any evidence that previous searches might have missed. The 20th anniversary of Tommy's disappearance in 2021 brought renewed media attention to the case. The Cook County Sheriff's Department issued a press release acknowledging that the case remained active and encouraging anyone with information to come forward. By this time, Detective Sarah Chen had become the primary investigator assigned to Tommy's case, bringing fresh eyes and modern investigative techniques to the decades-old mystery. It was during this period of renewed interest that fate would finally provide a breakthrough in the case that had haunted the North Shore community for 2 decades. On September 23, 2021, experienced hikers Janet and Robert Coleman were exploring a remote section of the Superior Hiking Trail system, approximately 12 miles from where Tommy had originally disappeared. The Colemans were avid outdoors enthusiasts who had been hiking the North Shore trails for over 30 years. They prided themselves on their knowledge of the area's geography and often ventured into less traveled sections of the trail system. On this particular day, they had decided to explore a spur trail that led to a small waterfall hidden deep in the forest. As they made their way through dense undergrowth along what was barely more than a game trail, Janet noticed something unusual about a large fallen log that lay across their path. The log, a massive white pine that had likely fallen years earlier, had a hollow section that appeared to have been enlarged by natural decay processes. Robert was examining the hollow space to determine if they could safely climb over the log when his flashlight beam illuminated something unexpected inside the cavity. Wedged deep within the hollow log was a small rectangular object that was clearly man-made. Carefully reaching inside, Robert extracted what appeared to be a child's lunchbox, its metal surface oxidized and discolored by years of exposure to moisture and the elements. The lunchbox bore the faded image of a popular cartoon character from the early 2000s, and despite its weathered condition, the Colemans could see that it had originally been bright blue with red trim. Janet immediately recognized the significance of their discovery, recalling the extensive media coverage of Tommy Richardson's disappearance 20 years earlier. Inside the lunchbox, protected from the worst of the weather by its metal construction, the Colemans found several items that would prove to be crucial evidence in the long unsolved case. The most significant discovery was a collection of drawings on paper that, while yellowed and brittle with age, remained largely intact and legible. The drawings appeared to be the work of a young child, created with colored pencils and crayons. They depicted various scenes that seemed to tell a story. A family hiking on a trail, a boy chasing what appeared to be a small animal into the woods, and several images of the child alone in a forest setting. The final drawings in the sequence showed the child writing what looked like a message or letter. One drawing in particular caught the Colemans' attention. It showed a figure that appeared to be waving goodbye, with text written in a child's handwriting that read, "Tell Mom and Dad I love them." The emotional impact of this message, preserved for 20 years in the wilderness, was overwhelming for the couple who discovered it. The Colemans immediately contacted the Cook County Sheriff's Department, reporting their discovery and providing detailed GPS coordinates of the location. Deputy Martinez, now a sergeant and still with the department, was among the first responders to reach the scene. She recognized the potential significance of the find and immediately secured the area as a potential crime scene. Detective Chen arrived at the location within 2 hours of the initial report, bringing with her a team of forensic specialists and evidence technicians. The lunchbox and its contents were carefully documented and photographed in their original location before being transported to the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension's Forensic Laboratory for detailed analysis. The discovery site was located in extremely remote terrain that would have been nearly impossible for an 8-year-old child to reach alone. The hollow log was situated at the bottom of a steep ravine, surrounded by thick undergrowth and rocky outcroppings that presented significant obstacles even for experienced adult hikers. This geographic reality raised immediate questions about how Tommy could have reached this location and why his remains were not found in the immediate vicinity. Forensic analysis of the lunchbox confirmed that it had indeed belonged to Tommy Richardson. DNA analysis of trace materials inside the container matched samples provided by Tommy's family during the original investigation. The drawings were examined by handwriting experts who compared them to school papers and other writing samples from Tommy's elementary school records. The handwriting analysis confirmed that the drawings had been created by Tommy, but the sophisticated content and emotional maturity of the final messages suggested they had been created over an extended period of time rather than immediately after his disappearance. This finding led investigators to consider the possibility that Tommy had survived in the wilderness for days or even weeks after vanishing from the hiking trail. Child psychologists who examined the drawings noted several significant details about their content and progression. The early drawings showed typical childhood scenes of family activities and outdoor adventures. However, the later drawings depicted increasing isolation and what appeared to be growing desperation. The final images included what experts interpreted as goodbye messages, suggesting Tommy had realized the severity of his situation. The discovery of the lunchbox prompted the most extensive search effort in the area since Tommy's original disappearance. Modern search techniques, including drone technology with thermal imaging and ground-penetrating radar, were employed to systematically examine every square foot of terrain within a 2-mile radius of the discovery site. Search teams discovered additional evidence during this renewed effort, including what appeared to be remnants of a small shelter constructed from branches and pine boughs. The shelter was located approximately 400 yards from where the lunchbox was found, in a slightly elevated area that would have provided some protection from rain and wind. Forensic examination of the shelter site revealed traces of fabric that matched the description of Tommy's clothing, as well as evidence of a small fire pit that had been carefully constructed to minimize smoke and detection. These findings painted a picture of a resourceful child who had managed to survive in the wilderness for at least some period of time after his disappearance. The investigation team also discovered what appeared to be a grave site about 100 yards from the shelter location. The careful arrangement of stones and the rectangular depression in the earth suggested human involvement rather than natural processes. However, excavation of the site revealed only animal remains, leading investigators to theorize that Tommy may have buried a small animal that had died, perhaps one he had befriended during his time alone in the wilderness. As the forensic analysis continued, investigators were able to piece together a more complete picture of what had likely happened to Tommy Richardson during those final weeks of summer in 2001. The evidence suggested that Tommy had indeed wandered off the hiking trail, possibly chasing a small animal or attracted by something that caught his attention in the dense forest. Unlike the initial theories that Tommy had quickly become lost and succumbed to the elements, the new evidence indicated he had possessed remarkable survival skills for an 8-year-old child. He had managed to find or create shelter, locate sources of water, and survive on berries, nuts, and possibly small animals he was able to catch. The drawings provided insight into Tommy's emotional state during his ordeal. Early sketches showed optimism and confidence that he would be found by rescue teams. However, as time passed and no help arrived, the drawings reflected increasing loneliness and fear. The final messages suggested that Tommy had accepted his fate, but wanted his family to know that he loved them. Medical experts who reviewed the evidence estimated that Tommy could have survived in the wilderness for anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks, depending on weather conditions, his ability to find food and clean water, and his overall physical condition. The late summer timing of his disappearance would have provided the most favorable conditions for survival, with abundant wild food sources and relatively mild nighttime temperatures. The question of what ultimately happened to Tommy's remains became the focus of the investigation's final phase. The remote location where his belongings were found was home to several large predator species, including black bears and wolves. Wildlife experts explained that these animals would have been attracted to any human presence in their territory, particularly a vulnerable child. While this reality was difficult for Tommy's family to accept, it provided a logical explanation for why his remains were never found, despite extensive search efforts. The dense forest canopy and rugged terrain would have made it easy for natural processes to completely obscure any physical evidence over the course of 20 years. Detective Chen worked closely with the Richardson family to share the investigation's findings in a sensitive and supportive manner. Mark and Sarah, both now remarried to other partners, were brought together by the need to finally learn the truth about their son's fate. Emma, now a mother herself, found some measure of peace in knowing that her brother had fought to survive and had thought of his family until the end. The Cook County Sheriff's Department officially classified Tommy Richardson's case as solved in January 2022, based on the preponderance of evidence indicating that he had died of natural causes while lost in the wilderness. The classification brought legal closure to the case, though the emotional impact on all involved would continue indefinitely. The Richardson family established a memorial fund in Tommy's name to support search and rescue operations in the Superior National Forest area. The fund provides equipment and training for volunteer search teams and helps maintain trail markers and emergency communication systems that might prevent future tragedies. Tommy's story has become part of the oral history of Minnesota's North Shore, serving as both a cautionary tale about wilderness safety and a testament to human resilience in the face of unimaginable circumstances. Local hiking guides often share his story with visitors, emphasizing the importance of staying together on trails and carrying proper emergency equipment. The Superior Hiking Trail Association installed a memorial plaque at the Eagles Perch Overlook where the Richardson family had stopped on their final hike together. The plaque reads simply, "In memory of Tommy Richardson, who loved these woods and waters, may all who pass this way return safely home." Emma Richardson, now Emma Martinez, after her marriage to a search and rescue volunteer she met during one of the anniversary searches for her brother, has become a leading advocate for missing children's cases throughout the Midwest. She frequently speaks at conferences and training sessions, sharing her family's experience and the lessons learned from Tommy's disappearance. The advanced search techniques used in the final resolution of Tommy's case have been adopted by law enforcement agencies throughout the region, improving their capability to locate missing persons in wilderness areas. The integration of modern technology with traditional search methods has already proven successful in several subsequent cases, including the recovery of 3 missing hikers in the Boundary Waters canoe area, just 6 months after Tommy's case was resolved. Detective Chen, who had become emotionally invested in Tommy's case over the years, found herself profoundly affected by the resolution. She had joined the department specifically because of her interest in cold cases, and Tommy's disappearance had become her defining investigation. The discovery of the lunchbox and drawings validated years of persistent work and demonstrated the importance of never abandoning hope in missing person cases. The forensic analysis also revealed fascinating details about Tommy's improvised survival techniques. Examination of the shelter site showed evidence of sophisticated construction methods that suggested Tommy had observed and learned from nature documentaries or outdoor survival shows. He had positioned the shelter to take advantage of natural windbreaks and had created a drainage system to prevent flooding during rainstorms. Local wildlife experts who studied the site noted that Tommy had chosen his shelter location with remarkable wisdom for a child his age. The spot was near a reliable water source, but elevated enough to avoid flooding, hidden from casual observation, but positioned to receive morning sunlight for warmth. These observations reinforced the conclusion that Tommy had possessed exceptional resourcefulness during his time alone in the wilderness. 21 years after an 8-year-old boy set out on what should have been an enjoyable family hike, his story finally reached its conclusion. Tommy Richardson's disappearance had evolved from a mysterious vanishing into a tale of survival, courage, and ultimately, peace for a family that had never stopped hoping for answers. The hollow log that preserved Tommy's final messages for 2 decades has been removed from the forest and is now part of a display at the Cook County Historical Society, where it serves as a reminder of one boy's courage and a family's enduring love. Visitors often leave small tokens and notes for Tommy, creating an ongoing memorial in the heart of the wilderness he had loved so much. While the mystery of Tommy Richardson's disappearance has been solved, his legacy continues through the improved safety measures, enhanced search capabilities, and strengthened community bonds that emerged from the tragedy. In the dense forests of Minnesota's North Shore, where the morning mist still hangs low over Lake Superior's pristine waters, Tommy's story reminds us all of the preciousness of family and the importance of never giving up hope, even in our darkest hours.